right, let's get started. Welcome to Business Builders Weekly. Excited to jump into a new series. We are going to be going through Leaders Eat Last, Hunger for Leadership. And I think the biggest thing that I want everybody to take out of this is really understanding it's it's not as bad as you think, but it is as bad as you think. Um, People are hungry for leadership, and a lot of times what they end up with is poor management. So, what my intention for this time, for this series, is to really help each one of us walk away with a deeper understanding of the hunger for leadership, as well as understanding what it means to lead with service, sacrifice, vision. Um, you've heard it in this community quite a bit. Without vision, the people will perish. People will fail. So if we don't, as leaders, show up with a very distinct and defined mission and vision for our people, our team to execute on a daily, weekly, quarterly, and annual basis, they will veer, drift, or fail. And all of those things are not positive. So if we can put together just a quick synopsis of everything that we're going to walk through over the next 3 to 4 weeks, it's really about creating this environment where people not only want to be led, but we understand as leaders not only why we need to eat last and what this concept really is. If you're not familiar with Simon Sinek and the book Leaders Eat Last, the principle comes out of the military. And this is not even a spoken rule or regimen. It's more of a cultural norm where leaders will eat last depending on their rank. So if you're just you're a boot camp, you're a recent candidate, you are coming in as an enlisted, not even an officer, just a little maggot, if you will, if you're familiar with Major Payne. Um, it dates myself a little bit, but if you haven't seen Major Payne, spoiler alert, it's a great movie. Um, but with that, no matter where you come in, that is where you eat in line. And going through the mess hall, you will literally get to the end of the line, and there's almost this sense of pride of going last. And culturally, in our day to day, first should be first and last should be last. That's the way that we've created this thing. Finders, keepers, losers, weepers. We grow up with these things. But in the military, specifically the culture of the Marines, you pride yourself on how far back in the line you allow yourself to be, because that speaks more to your rank and your willingness to sacrifice and serve your fellow man versus being the top ranked, therefore you get to go first. So as we go through this, I would love for you to not only engage in kind of the listening aspect, but really engage from a sense of how does this apply to me? How do I take this content? How do I get better in each one of these phases? So we're going to go through this. Buckle up. It's going to be a, a very fun ride, but it's going to be maybe a little bit jarring to some. Maybe it's affirming to others. But I think when we land this plane at the end of the series, I want you to walk away knowing not only where you are as a leader, but where your gaps are. Identifying those areas of opportunity in your own leadership, your own team dynamics, to where you're getting better coming out of these lessons, out of these calls than you are today, whether that's with your team at work, with your partners or coworkers, with your family. We want to have an effect and an impact on every area of your life, but mostly we're here for the impact on your business. But leadership doesn't turn off and on. It's something that you curate, you develop. And I can tell you that while we all want to be leaders and we all may even get into a default mode of saying, I'm not a leader or I wasn't born a leader. Well, nobody was born a leader. We were all born babies. So you all started from the same place. And so we're going to jump off from that point knowing that we are all leaders in progress. We're all aspiring to be better at the discipline that we signed up for. So let's start with the hunger within. So going from here, I want to start out with really some foundational understandings why leaders eat last. Leadership is not just about strategy and authority. I know that could have unrooted some of you right there. It's about biology. We're going to get into a little bit of a nerding out because we want to understand who we're leading. I think for a lot of us, and I'll speak for myself, I'll speak to myself, my leadership really started to take off and be more effective when I started to pay attention to who I was leading versus who I was as a leader. What I mean by that is I needed to be more sensitive, more cognizant of the people that I was leading, how they receive messages, how they hear what I'm saying, versus just speaking to them the way that I receive messages. Our bodies release chemicals that shape how we feel, behave, connect. Understanding these elements help leaders create environments where people thrive. We, as a baseline, as humans, take leadership off the table. We lead, we communicate the way that we naturally receive messages. So if you've ever felt disconnected from somebody that you are communicating with, the chances are good that you don't have a natural communication that is akin or aligned with that person. I.e., if you are a high driver or a high influencer, and you're talking to a very analytical person or even a supportive or that stabilizer type of mentality, you may feel coming out of that conversation very disconnected. Like we are missing each other on some sort of level, and I don't know what's going on. The truth of the matter is you are, but the great news is that you can absolutely learn how to connect. So I want to go through really what makes up this biology of leadership and going into the elements or the chemicals that make up each one of us and what we're actually seeing when we're leading, and maybe we're getting responses from people that we don't understand why they're responding the way that they're responding, or maybe they're reacting a certain way. Maybe they're just not receiving the message the way that we want them to receive it. Again, I've said this before and I'll scream it from the rooftop. If your people aren't responding the way that you want them to respond, you're not leading the way that you think you're leading. So the 5 key chemicals of leadership. So I want to make sure that, I'm not giving you doctor level stuff, but I want to keep this as high level as I can without watering it down too much. So these 5 chemicals of leadership, endorphins, if you've ever heard of the runner's high, this is something that runners will experience. Myself, it's around 4 to 4.5 miles, which I'm exhausted just getting to that point. But that runner's high is where you feel like you can pretty much do whatever you need to do, want to do, as long as you need or want to do it. Dopamine. This is the achievement drug. This is the gold star, the ribbon that my daughter comes home with after field day, and she got fifth place in the long jump. And we have a conversation, but I want to celebrate fifth place because there was seven people that competed. Serotonin, this is the leadership chemical. This is your ability to really dig into that person and really start to establish yourself as a model in front of them. Oxytocin, this is the bonding hormone. So oxytocin, this is something that ingratiates ourselves to another person. Sometimes this is through multiple different channels, but I think it's important that we understand that we want to build into all of these different, we'll call them uh, elements or ingredients of this recipe that we're building. And then cortisol. This is often overlooked. So the cortisol is the chemical. This is the stress chemical. This is your fight or flight chemical. Um, I say it's often overlooked, and I wish that I never would have heard this as often as I have. But this is something where I see a lot of business owners. We actually work with quite a few of them that are very dominant personalities. They are the top left of that DISC assessment, and they can be somewhat responsive, or they can be reactive, or they can be explosive. It's a it's a real thing for them to have to navigate. But most of the time, when I bring it up to business owners or aspiring leaders or managers or supervisors, the response I typically get when I say, hey, I think you're putting undue stress on your team, well, I give them a paycheck every week. They need to be able to deal with it. I'm just telling you, if you're getting results that are not what you want, you may have this blind spot in jacking up or taking over that cortisol hormone in your team. So let's dive into these individually. So the first one, that endorphin. So the purpose of this is to really mask physical pain. It allows for perseverance. We referred to this as the runner's high. I will tell you from my own experience, from a physical standpoint, this is an amazing hormone that allows you to get past shin splints or achy knees or sore muscles. It's where you go from, I don't know if I can get this full workout done, to I just crushed it and I could probably do it again. If you put that into the context of leadership, we do this every day internally, but we want to celebrate the small wins. We want to encourage effort. With this, we want leaders who acknowledge progress and give their people the fuel to keep pushing forward. Each one in this community, on this call, a part of the All True family, we're all pushing. There's no mystery about it. We're all pushing, we're all growing, we're all trying to get to that next summit of scaling our business. What we need to understand as leaders is that if we only look at the quarterly or annual things that we've set out as targets or our vision, we never acknowledge those small wins, we could be passing by and burning out our people. Leadership example, applaud the team after a tough client deadline. Um, I see clients on this training today that I know you face some pretty tight deadlines at times. Getting something pulled across the finish line in maybe 2 weeks when the normal kind of scope of work allows for 3 or 4. We have the team pull together, pull that thing, we push through the challenges, but we don't see the burnout because we're celebrating those small wins. We're giving our team these little hits of endorphins. Dopamine, the achievement drug. So with this one, the purpose is really motivation and reward system, these feedback loops. These released when we accomplish goals or anticipate rewards. I I think I'm always going to default to giving you guys kind of the real and raw thing. We recently, back in May, so it is August right now. So back in May, we went on vacation, and almost when we got back, I would say it was maybe within a week or two of getting back into the States, my wife said, well, we should probably identify our next trip. One, it'll keep us going for the next kind of push in our life, which for us is school schedules, band rehearsals, football, all the things. I think most of us can identify with that, whether it's personally or professionally. We need to have these little targets that are out there. But this, being able to play into and extort the dopamine hits, this is going to allow us to push. So the leadership insight is really to set clear, measurable goals, these little benchmarks, because without them, teams lack motivation, they lack inspiration. We are constantly looking at ways for us to really allow for ownership within our teams. No one is going to own your business like you own your business. No one is going to enjoy or look forward to your vision the way that you look forward to your vision. But if you lead through this and setting these measurable, clear expectations, this is where you can literally uh, have a chemical response in your leadership to your team. Too much dopamine focus, numbers, metrics, money, KPIs can lead to short-term thinking. So again, it's kind of this push and pull we talk about a lot actually in this group, is kind of setting these little benchmarks, these checkpoints along the way. But then once we hit those, celebrating those little wins, but once we get to that big target, really blowing it up, letting people know, hey, we did hard things together. Sales contests, they spark dopamine, but here's the caveat. Without trust and purpose, they will risk derailing everything that you're trying to build. I experienced this quite a bit on the HR side. HR people, God love them, but man, do they love a good survey. I think surveys are one of the worst ideas without follow-up. Because then you're telling your people, hey, let's do this thing. It's going to be really exciting. And then you don't actually follow through with the follow-up on a survey, and you actually disengage your team at a higher level because now you've told them that you're willing to waste their time, you don't really care about their opinion, and you're not going to make any changes based on their feedback. So, sales contests spark dopamine. That's a great example, but if you don't have the rules laid out, you can actually deter your sales team. You can take away from those selling techs. You can take away from the designers that you're asking to have that second sale mentality as they're doing scope of work with clients. Be very mindful of this. This is a very powerful drug, but if used wisely, you can actually have quite a bit of an effect. Next, we've got the leadership chemical. This leadership chemical is serotonin. So it builds pride, respect, and status recognition. So leaders earn serotonin by serving others. This is one of those underutilized or under-recognized drugs of choice. I think it's pretty phenomenal. I talk about this quite a bit, inside and outside my home quite a bit, just because I think it's misunderstood, but it's underutilized. Um, I've got 5 kids, tons of different versions of math. And the thing about math is that it all builds on itself. So if I can get my 8th grader teaching my 7th grader, teaching the 4th grader, they all grow in their competency, but they have these little serotonin bursts. And they also get the achievement drug of being kind of the expert in the room. And then we build off of that runner's high where they're like, ah, this really stinks having to be nice to my sibling, but I also get to tell them how much I know. So we're playing off these different things. How many times have you done an onboarding for the 100th time, it feels like, and you feel like there's a trepidation or even a disdain for hiring new team members because you know you have to do the onboarding? I know I have had that. Before I had a system and a process for onboarding to where I could literally do it one last time and then have somebody transfer ownership in their new role to onboarding themselves, having that self-guided measure. This is that process. This is giving somebody the opportunity to not only serve others, but when we assign an onboarding mentor in your team on from our team, it's for something bigger than just getting it off my plate. There's a chemical response that we're mixing into this cocktail of leadership. So when leaders recognize their teams publicly, everyone's serotonin rises. Leadership principle, and I'll pause here. Leadership principle is that we praise in public and correct in private. I see this missed a lot, which is why I'm pausing here. We had a business owner not too long ago feel the need to make a correction on the team with really 2 out of about 12 of the team members. Um, and it was interesting because he knew he had to address the problem with 2 of his team members, but he pulled everybody out of the field to have this conversation and publicly just blasted all of them for the transgressions of 2. What he found over the next week and a half was 1 left, 1 disengaged, and the 2 that he was trying to correct didn't get the message. So, what I want you to understand is that we correct in private, we celebrate in public. We want to make sure that each of those little wins that we're getting, the dopamine hits, those serotonin hits, the opportunities are there. We just have to make sure that we're taking advantage of them. So as we go, let's move into that oxytocin, the bonding hormone. So it fosters trust, generosity, and human connection. I wanted to make sure that we spent a little bit of time here because a lot of us are in that left side of the DISC assessment. We are either really analytical, really dominant personalities. We are the minority of the human race. It's just the reality of it. We struggle with this one a lot. And I'm speaking to myself just as much as I am for you. But I don't want you to pass over oxytocin because it grows through acts of kindness, vulnerability, which we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, and shared experiences. It is the foundation of long-term trust. When a business owner, when a business leader takes time to know their team members personally, oxytocin strengthens the bond beyond just employee status. This is tough because as that task-oriented community on the left side of the DISC assessment, we can pass over these little opportunities to build these bonds, making these shared experiences. Yeah, we did hard things. Let's acknowledge. I had a really cool opportunity yesterday. My son tried out for football for the middle school team. He made it, which was really cool. He had never done anything like this. He's not the fastest, he's not the strongest, but he is persistent, and that's what got him on the team. By the time we got home, FedEx was driving away from our house, and his new cleats came to the door. And I said, "Hey, dude, you should open that box." Even though it had my name on it, he opened the box. It was these brand new cleats, and he's just like, "Holy cow! Like, how did you know that I was going to make the team?" And I just looked at him and I said, "Hey, dude, you can do hard things, and you just did hard things." And that was probably the best $75 I've spent in the last 6 months. The beaming glow out of this little, I would say he's probably 5'1", 5'2", but man, he was about 7 foot tall at that point. Just excited. But when we take the time to know what our people need, what they desire, how they are inspired, we can take it far beyond them just being an employee or a team member on our team. They start to take on ownership of their role inside of our business. And then last but not least, the fifth element or the fifth ingredient in this chemical bath that we find ourselves in with leadership is cortisol. It alerts us of danger, increase, anxiety, short-term survival response. This is the fight or flight hormone. In moderation, it protects us. In excess, it destroys trust and damages health. Toxic work cultures flood people with cortisol. If you've never been a part of a toxic work culture or even just taking it down a notch, an, an unhealthy work culture, an environment where it's all work, no play, there's no celebration, it's you're just doing it to draw a paycheck, and the biggest motivation are the faces when you see at 5 o'clock. If you are in that environment now, take ownership of it, acknowledge it, change it. Leadership example, a boss, and that to me is my least favorite four-letter word, but I think boss is very much a four-letter word. Who yells or micromanages spikes cortisol, which kills creativity and the safety. One thing we want to understand is that 69% of our people, almost 7 out of 10 of our people, no matter what the industry, what the position, what the role, 69%, 7 out of 10 people are in this supportive quadrant of the disc. They're agreeable, they're measured, they're patient, but their default is judgment and withdrawal. So if they see this, if they experience it, and you start to see them maybe take a back seat in all team meetings, maybe they are less vocal in sales training, maybe they are a little bit more reclusive when they were starting to step into difficult conversations, you might have spiked over a series of events, their cortisol level, and they have a hard time regulating. The reason I bring this up so often is I think it's very important for us as leaders to acknowledge who's in the room. If you are speaking to the person as if you are speaking to you, which you do this naturally without awareness, you may be missing 97% of the room talking to people in bullet points and action items. I'm the first one to tell you, I love me some action items. That is like my soul language. You speak to my heart, you speak to me in action items. But if I speak to the room only as if I'm the receiver of the message, I'm probably going to lose 95 to 97% of the room. So going into this culture mixology, the culture is a chemical cocktail. Your culture is a chemical cocktail that you're mixing with trust, pride, connection, stress, and fear. We have to acknowledge these things, these ingredients that we're playing with. Everybody is in on the game. Whether they know it or not, you are the mixologist as the leader of the bar. And so really what question you need to ask yourself today is, which drink are you serving your team every day? Is it something satisfying? Is it something that's bitter? Is it something that has too much of something or too little of another? Making sure and ensuring that you have the right ingredients at the right dosage to make sure that you are serving the best cultural cocktail, cultural mixology, whatever you want to look at that, but making sure that we are navigating endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and cortisol. So with that, we're going to take a little bit of a shift in creating a circle of safety. When leaders create safety inside, people can face danger outside. The safest place in your business should be in your business. The hills, the danger, the challenges should not be navigating your team or your culture, your environment. The challenges should literally be residing outside with clients, with competitors, with things that are outside forces attacking your team, your business. This circle of safety really is the environment that allows people to thrive inside and become warriors on your behalf. This is an invisible shield a leader builds around their team, where people feel safe from internal politics, blame, or sabotage. I have been a part of some remarkable cultures. I've also been a part of some shaky ones. I will say that I've been fortunate not to be in anything that I would deem as toxic, but I can tell you that I have been in environments where the internal politics are louder than the products and services that we sell. There's not a marketing message that has been able to drown out the internal politics or blame game between supervisors and team members, managers and teams, owners and employees. It can be very disarming, but it can also lead to a lot of not only sabotage, but self-sabotage. I've seen team members leave environments like this on the very precipice of greatness, but it's nobody's fault except for ownership and leadership. So building this circle of safety for your team. So in small business, uncertainty is constant. Cash flow, competition, clients, whatever that is, those are outside forces. But this is why it matters for us to address this. If team members also feel unsafe inside the company, they burn out, they disengage, or they leave. The worst, and we know this from a lot of surveys, specifically Gallup, if an employee, a team member is disengaged or actively disengaged, they are literally taking away from the momentum or actively sabotaging your business. They may not even know it because they're operating off of cortisol. They may not even know it. They may think, I'm protecting my team from the big bad boss. A lot of times when I've had these conversations, there's an aha moment that happens. They're like, "Oh, I didn't realize I was doing that." And then we get to talk about the bigger issue, the bigger challenges behind that. Leaders must ensure the threats stay outside the walls. If it's not safe inside, again, your people will leave. We cannot expect somebody to suffer 52 hours a week for 40 hours a week and be happy about it just because we're drawing them a paycheck every 2 weeks. So, we want to make sure that we're focusing our team on growth, customers, innovation. And everybody on this call, I know this is where your focus is, so I think it's awesome. Next, we're going to go into protecting teams from external threats. Build through behavior. A couple of lessons ago, we talked about behavior as a language. This is something that is going to be a consistent theme through everything that we do on the leadership side. But taking responsibility when things go wrong. The number of managers and business owners that I have experienced that struggle with oops, or it was my fault, or I didn't mean to do that, or I'm sorry is incredibly powerful, but it's really hard to get to come out of your face sometimes. Building through behaviors, protecting the team from external pressures, angry clients, market shifts. We've been around long enough to where we went through the crash of '08, the pause of 2015, the pause, if you will, of 2020 to 2022, depending on what industry you're coming in from. These were either really good times or really bad times, but there was no stagnation in either one. But we want to make sure that those things are external to our team, that our people feel well cared for. We want to eliminate internal backstabbing and gossip. I don't know when we outdated the water cooler, but there is so much water cooler talk in some environments, and they don't even have a water cooler to gather at. They're just sitting in general around some thing to be gossiping about or bad mouthing somebody about, or just, we have a little bit of a stereotype in the South where you don't gossip about people, you just add them to your prayer list and you add them to other people's prayer list so they can be praying for this person's thing. So we don't gossip, we just add people to our list of people that they need to be in our thoughts and prayers. Communicating openly about challenges. This is one of the things that I think leaders can do really poorly, but it's actually something that you could leverage quite well. Communicating openly about challenges, what that looks like, what the market looks like, what the watermark looks like, what the benchmark looks like, what the internal finances look like. All of these are examples of building safe levels of transparency so you can have everybody in the boat or on the bus rowing or riding in the same direction. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an example here for a temperature check. So imagine a home service business, we'll say somewhere in that really that second to fourth pressure point in their business. If the owner blames field staff for a customer complaint, that's an internal threat. Morale is going to take a tank. Because if you got onto Frank and Frank's a top performer in front of the group, because Sally, homeowner, said that he didn't do or did do something, and before investigating, before building that wall around him, you just went straight after him, trusting the customer's always right. You can collapse the morale of the team, but also lose other field technicians, field staff, contributors of your team. If the owner shields the team, works with them on solutions, being a solution-based leader, and deals directly with the customer, the external threat, they grow trust. Recently, we had a leader that he's newer in his role as a we leader, and he sent me a quick text. This was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. But he sent me a quick text and said, hey, I've got a difficult conversation I need to have with a team member tomorrow morning. I'd love to role play. I'd love to get this kind of out of my system because what I want to say, I know it's not the best, but I want the kind of the spirit of what I want to say to come out without it coming across harsh. He's a great guy. He's a growing leader. But he had a situation where customer was not happy. A detail got missed. It was a little thing, but a big thing. He dealt directly with the client, got the customer rescheduled for the following day, but then addressed this in a one-on-one with the team member. And I will tell you the transformation between us role playing the day before and the actual delivery of the conversation, you wouldn't even know this was the same person. And this isn't a pat Kirk on the back because he did this. This is a be mindful of the direction that you want to take a conversation in order to really draw out the outcomes that you want from a conversation. We recorded both versions. We were able to listen to the role play as well as the actual conversation that was implemented. And there are some of these moments where you're just proud of your people. And this was one of those. So really taking that temperature check for yourself of where am I as a leader? How am I showing up to these difficult conversations? How am I handling it when we have external threats? Am I putting that back on my team? Am I, subscribing to the old adage that the customer's always right? Harvard Business Review did what they called the service profit chain. And the service profit chain essentially debunks this idea that the customer's always right, that the customer comes first. It truly is the profitability of the business is drawn when business leaders put the employee, the team members first, and then allow them to be equipped to lead the customer well. A lot of times we think the customer owns the revenue that we want, and so everything that we do is generated off of customer engagement, customer satisfaction. But I can tell you that what this study unearthed and really teased out is that if you have remarkably satisfied and happy internal team members, they will make remarkably satisfied and profitable company customers for your organization. Jumping in. So, aspiring leaders, your people should never be your problem. We talk about it often. You can't throw people at your problems. You have to throw solutions at your problems. People are not solutions. They are not there to be the problem, and they're not there to be thrown at your problem. They are the solution. They are the problems are outside: competition, cash flow, changing markets, somebody stealing your back engine funnel off of Instagram and kind of doing the thing without you, whatever that looks like. Your job is to create a safe circle inside so they can fight the real battles, the battles that are external, the ones that are causing the threat to your business. So, hunger in purpose. What drives leaders to serve? The hunger, quote unquote, in leadership isn't greed or ambition, it's the deep drive to make a difference. This is so important to get. Yes, your business has to be profitable. Yes, you have to generate uh, revenue. But if it's the primary ambition, if getting the new car, the new plane, the new house, the new building, the new you put whatever after that blank that you want, if that is the main thing and there's nothing underpinning that and it's just greed or ambition, it's going to lead to devastation. Hunger and leadership equals the ruthless desire to serve a cause greater than oneself. We've done studies over the past really 7 years, and I think the biggest thing and what we see both internally as well as a part of even larger studies of hundreds of thousands of employees is that we see this shift around 1990 to 1992 in birthday, where people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. It's no longer enough to just have a job that maybe they enjoy, maybe they don't, doesn't matter. Before that, it was very utilitarian in nature, the employee engagement. What we find now is people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They want to be a part of a team that pulls the rope in the same direction to accomplish the goal. We want to create this on purpose. We want to create not only hungry people, but we want to create business leaders that are hungry for purpose, hungry on purpose, hungry as their purpose. Purpose is a fuel that sustains them through risk, uncertainty, and setbacks. If you're on this call and you're a business owner, maybe you're in a revenue generating position where the pressure is greater in those two types of roles in the business. Your fuel when you've gotten kicked in the teeth, it's purpose. That will get you through a lot of the inherent risk or uncertainty or the setbacks or the discouragement that could be hitting you on a daily basis. You get a contract that you were 90% sure was going to renew or close, and then all of a sudden they change their mind, they do something different. The bigger purpose is what's at play in this situation. Teams will only eat last, sacrifice, work hard, stay loyal if they believe the leader's hunger is genuine and selfless. If you've ever been around I'll say a quote, leader, because I don't believe that just because you have the title makes you a leader. But if you've ever been around a leader that um, has a great sense of vocabulary and linguistic tracks to attract and draw attention, and yet the character is not there. They're not selfless in nature. There's a high ego or pride attached to that, and it continues to unearth itself the more success the team generates for that leader or business. People will self-select out of that. They will stop sacrificing. They will stop working hard. And the loyalty that you thought you had as a leader, as a business owner, is all built on sand because there's an ego, there's pride that is on the back end of what you proposed as a genuine and selfless leadership style, but it all was smoke and mirrors, if you will. Misalignment. This is one of those words that you probably only hear in this environment. If the leader's hunger is only for profit, status, or ego, the team sees through it. People are smart. People are emotional beings. We have more than 141 emotions and feelings that we can experience at any given time. On previous trainings, we've gone through many of those. I have feelings wheels throughout my house. I'm very intent on helping not only team members, but I'm very intent on helping people in my sphere of influence, my circle of safety, if you will. I want them to not only be able to identify where they are, but I want them to realign where they are with where they want to be. A lot of times, being able to acknowledge where we are emotionally is where we start the process of changing. People won't give their best if they feel they're only feeding someone else's appetite. This is where clarity in the mission, vision, and core values. Mission is why we do it. Vision is where those core values are the behaviors necessary to be successful in this environment. If any of those things are misaligned with our character, with our leadership style, if people start to sense that we're only driving towards these monthly targets because we want to be profitable or we want to hit a certain status or we have an ego to stroke or people don't care. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They don't necessarily want to build your vision unless they see their success inside of your business and inside of your vision. So again, where there is no vision or a lack of vision, the people will fail. They'll perish. They will self-select out of the assignment. And then to be aligned, when hunger is tied to mission, service, or shared success, teams rally behind it. I have seen not only in the All True team, but I've seen in past situations where we've done some really cool stuff, but some really hard things. We've had situations where AJ and myself have had to step out of our, I'll say, our given strength or our trained strength in order to do hard things outside of our core competencies for the success of the business. But every time we've shared that message with the team of things that we're having to step out of and into, it's never been, we're doing this because we're getting to the next thing. It's always, if we don't do this, we're not going to be able to impact the lives that we've signed up to impact. We've signed up specifically in our vision to impact and bring along 1,000 purpose-driven, altruistic business owners. That may sound like a small number, may sound like a big number. For me, it scares me to death. But I can tell you that if we can impact the lives of 1,000 purpose-driven, entrepreneurial, generous, ambitious, altruistic business owners, I know from just exercising the numbers that we're going to have an impact on more than 100,000 lives across the country that are going to have this newfound rally cry of helping people get rich, give generously. An example of this would be, we don't just sell products, we don't just sell widgets, we don't just sell HVAC systems or pipes. We help small families save money. We help families do X. We help businesses do Y. This is where you change from a product to a service, a product and service to an emotion, a feeling, an outcome that really drives and affects lives. So to put a bow on this, we're going to do a quick kind of takeaway activity, but this is going to maybe be a little bit hard. Might be something to grapple with over the next 5 to 7 days. If my business disappeared tomorrow, what would the world lose? If my business disappeared tomorrow, what would the world lose? I said a lot of things. I shared a lot of insight. I hope that this was impactful. I hope it got you thinking about why it is, as a leader, you should be the last to eat. You should be the last to drink. But you should also be the one in the kitchen, the one behind the bar, mixing the chemical recipe of the drink you want to serve to your team every day they show up for you. With that, have a great second half of the week. Make it productive and stay thirsty, my friends.